Excuse my persistence. I see my childhood body, yes, but what about my adolescent body and the others? You don't see them because they are living in the present instant. They live in the fifth dimension, in temporal waves which are not ruled by the clock and calendar. They live in space times different from those we are using. At death, then, the soul does not separate from the body. The soul separates from the cadaver, and that's why it's called a separated soul. But it does not become independent of the living material of its prior bodies, since this material remains eternally alive in the great storehouse of past time. At death, the soul, joined to the total organism, separates from the cadaver. Consequently, isolated souls do not exist apart from the total body. The soul and the entire organism are consubstantial and therefore inseparable. From conception, all the man remains alive and continues to subsist after death for the simple reason it hasn't died. Only the corpse corrupts. Death does not affect the total body prior to the act of dying. Who then are the dead? Those who are called dead continue living in objective and universal eternal reality, not in the present moment of terrestrial time. They live without their cadaver and without taking the same temporal path as the travelers. These dead persons continue to live at a different pace on other paths of the intricate frequencies of time. They live in a place which they merited according to their earthly works, but they live free from the bondage of their consciousness to the present. Then, instead of saying living and dead, we should say free and captives. Yes, something like that. Now observe the tragic confusion between the integral body and the cadaver. The process of actual death begins at a determined moment and not before. And in this simple moment, the testimony of your senses cruelly mislead you. You confuse deplorably the past which you are unable to see with the present you observe. Without justification, you transpose data of the present to the past. You arbitrarily decide that history has been annihilated, and you conclude that the immediate past merges with the present. In this childish manner, you confuse the putrefied mass of the cadaver with the whole man, incorruptible and eternal, who continues forever in the majestic objective reality of the fifth dimension. The cadaver, she added, continues its corruption in the passage of normal terrestrial time. But, as I warned you, before the process of death, the entire human being is free of putrefaction. But this organism does not find itself in the risky present moment. It lives complete and immortal, but without the cadaver, in the sphere of created eternity. Well, then, she emphasized, don't you think the conviction that the dead continue with the bodies and souls immediately after their demise, although without their cadavers, mitigates the suffering of the relatives who experience the death of their loved ones? Doesn't the moral certitude that everything is forever that everything is forever calm you even though you are unable to observe it? This is why I tell you that the fifth dimension is the source of optimism. It is strange that God reveals the mystery of created eternity to secular scientists and not to the learned hierarchy of the church. There is nothing strange about it. Secular scientists are also part of the church. I already told you that the pedagogy of divine revelation is slow and progressive, according to the culture and Christian progress. not materialism of the society. The ideas given to you by our Lord, and which I have now clarified, may seem new to you. You will see from heaven, however, that in the next century they will be taken into account by the magisterium. Why doesn't God permit me to see the space times of my prior bodies in the marvelous fifth dimension? It is the first thing you will see in your particular judgment. It will be soon. Mortal life is most brief, however desperately the travelers seek to hold on to it. Moreover, the Lord has permitted bilocation in your childhood body. That's a lot. On the other hand, the shock of contemplating the majesty of the eternal objective reality of the universe as a traveler would overwhelm you. The grandiose observation of your entire past would diminish your human freedom in the present moment. You would love the Most High for selfish interest or out of fear. It would reduce the merit of your future glory. Our God does not want love of charity which is forced. To help you better esteem the fifth dimension, tenderly loved told me, I am going to tell you what happened to me after my particular judgment, but before glorification, when I assisted at my own burial at the cemetery of Saucito. Did you attend your own burial? I asked her, more than amazed. She smiled at me. In her blessed, happy expression, I noticed an abandonment of amiable and pious indulgence. In another occasion, I will relate to you the living details of our God during that stage of my death. For now, let me tell you what the angel who assisted me in that difficult moment said. I am taking you to your interment, since it is necessary for your purgatory, so that you comprehend the enormous deception of what is sinful and worldly. I was taken by the arm with such force that I was unable to resist. Through the great power of my angel, she continued, we arrived, without my being able to explain how, at the principal gate of the cemetery. The casket has just arrived with my cadaver, and a very beautiful casket. I saw my relatives and friends without their awareness of my presence. But could you see without eyes? Of course not. I was looking with the corporal eyes of my biological face immediately before my actual death. Don't forget that each act of existence endures forever in its respective space time. I already told you that the total human organism is multiple, that is, forming through the uninterrupted series of existential acts, but that each one of these acts, joined to its space-time, can be separated from the others, although this is not accomplished during mortal life. Later, after a good death, the entire organism, freed from the bonding of its consciousness to the present, is able to consciously operate with any act or biological phase of its past life, vigorously guarded in the fifth dimension, and it is possible to live in very diverse temporal waves. Why didn't your relatives see you? The angel and I placed ourselves in temporal waves different from normal terrestrial time. Listen, radio station waves are all found in the air of the city, but your radio only receives those stations synchronized with it. In a similar way, my family and friends, with their consciousness bound to the present, live in the stream of waves of ordinary terrestrial time. On the contrary, my angel and I were traveling in another stream of temporal waves, parallel but not communicable. parallel but not communicable with those of the traveler. Because, in spite of wave movement of equal frequencies, my temporal rhythm had an instant of delay relative to mortals. My relatives, therefore, were unable to see me in a different temporal wave. At another time, I'll tell you how I suffered the deception of worldly affections upon reading in the minds of some of my relatives their true sentiments toward me. My three sons and a nephew, Damien, recovering from rheumatism, carried my casket on their shoulders. But my nephew stumbled, and I felt the blow on my head, which resounded in the badly cushioned casket. Ah, I said to my angel, they are going to bury me alive. But he calmed me. Don't worry, the human soul does not separate instantaneously from the cadaver, but gradually. While living material remains, the soul assists and animates it. I didn't understand him. Tenderly loved continued, since I didn't yet process infused celestial science. I insisted. I felt the hit on my head. I am not really dead. Please stop the burial.